Radio Free Skaro.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 712. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
This is that. I actually forgot that this was that time of year until the Doctor Who account tweeted it on Saturday, saying that, hey, everyone gets to sleep in an extra hour. Yes, it's daylight saving time. Or it's come to an end now, I guess, is how it works, right? Yeah, in the UK, but not here. So we're in that weird window where the UK is like 1 hour closer now. It's only 6 hours away for us.
We don't have Doctor Who to figure out a schedule of.
Oh, God. Yeah, we still have podcasts to think about, like those that record in multiple time zones. And if we record stuff with the UK, which spoiler alert, we are. Because this week we're taking a couple weeks off from the commentaries, just partially just to take a bit of a break, but also because we had sort of planned to take breaks anyway, anticipating and assuming that there would be Doctor Who news dropping both or at San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con.
No.
Neither happened. So we thought, well, I got 2 weeks to sort of fill. Well, hell, here we'll do this. We'll talk about the Target Storybook this week. Simon Guerrier, who wrote one of the 15 short stories for the book, kindly dropped by it. So he's on this episode talking about the Target Storybook, which came out last Thursday, is available everywhere now. And next week, I've been greatly enthused about the Terry Nation Army videos on YouTube from the Dalek 6388 channel. And I said, to hell with it. Enough of this. I want to talk about this. So I dropped John and Gav a line from who do the work on those amazing videos. And so they're going to be on next week. And I'm talking to them on Monday. And I didn't know. I had created on my little calendar schedule, like, okay, there we are. It's all planned. It's, oh, no, I have to change it now. I have to change it. So I actually, instead of like putting the calendar event for my own time, I thought, let's just put it time zone Greenwich Mean Time, and then it'll sort itself out. And sure enough, it did. So now
gripping stuff,
isn't it? Though this is but I mean, we used to be in sync. We used to be like on the same timeline. Now we're not. We're not for like.
Well, I maintain the Nationals have to win the World Series to bring us back to the lighter timeline.
I think
Cubs is what caused this, man.
I think you're right. I think it's happening right now, Warren. I think the timelines are, and it once again revolves around sports, as everything does in life,
especially in Warren's life.
I tend to disagree.
I don't know when do we here in North America switch the clocks back? When does that happen?
I don't know, sometime in November.
I know, but because I'm going to be in Vancouver visiting Warren in a couple of weeks. I haven't been to Vancouver in like years, and haven't been obviously to visit you, Warren. And I'm thinking, is it that weekend? It might be that weekend.
And also, you said sometime in November. I'm like, oh, that far away. Wait a minute. It's not far away at all.
Next month, man. It's like next month.
It's like next week, basically.
When in doubt, hey Siri, when does daylight savings end?
Don't do this. Sorry, everyone listening on Siri.
Time ends on Sunday, November 3rd, 2019.
The 3rd. There we go. So it's 2 weeks, I guess. The 3rd. All right. So look at that. It's next weekend. How about that? Yep. Next weekend, another spoiler. Peeling back the curtain a little bit here. We are recording on November 3rd the first batch of our RFS Fluid Links Advent calendar ones. Like, there's no point in saying, hey, it's a surprise they're coming back, because we've done them like for 3 or 4 years now, but we want more time to prepare them. So send in your Fluid Links, hashtag Fluid Links on Twitter, questions or comments about Doctor Who that we will randomly draw and talk about. And for those that
solve nothing.
And so literally solve nothing. That's the goal.
And when you say more time to prepare, Stephen, they are being animated again.
Well, don't say animated.
Yes.
Don't say animated.
Sorry, telesnap.
Lego telesnap
so
version.
I presume I will return in old man form.
You
Older
will
man form.
return. Yeah, we'll see what the. I'll see if there's any costume changes afoot for this this second season of Lego RFS Telesnap Fluid Links.
Warren recently shed a few pounds and looks very svelte.
Well,
so if you have a slightly skinnier minifig,
That guy wasn't excessively full of cellulose.
yeah.
Plastic cellulose.
Yeah,
He
I
seemed like just a regular old guy.
Lego is very just sort of like very forgiving or not forgiving. It's just there's your body type is basically literally an A line, you know. It's
uniform.
Yeah.
yeah. So unless I get you a Lego Friends, but I don't think you've. Then we're just sort of like playing it around. I don't want to be friends. Then
Did you get the Central Perk set?
no, because it's when I say Lego Friends, see, this is confusing because Lego Friends is the line of what they intended for girls to play with, but apparently it's very popular. But and they have different minifigs. They have like all the same bricks, but the minifigs are like thin and slender and sort of have like
They're kind of more realistic, I guess.
no, wow, realistic? Is it really realistic? They're kind of really like
Well, they're not the sort of like Lego minifigs are iconic,
Yeah.
but they're not realistic. They're just kind of an abstraction of a person. And
Yeah.
I think the Friends, unless I'm way off, kind of look more like people.
I think they're designed to look more like people than perhaps the minifigs are, but the minifigs,
That's what I mean, yeah.
So that the hair fits. I will say that the Lego version of Erica in Verity, because there's a Verity crew that Deb had made up and gave to me at a Gallifrey one a few years ago. The very same Verity crew that appeared in Doctor Who magazine. The hair now that she wears is a hair from a Lego Friends set. So
Gotcha.
this is fascinating. God, I can't
Should
believe
we?
Gripping. Man, we are doing deep dives on nothing.
712 episodes, everyone, and we have come to this talking about.
I was just thinking, should you and I, Stephen, should we not be represented with like Duplo or Playmobil or something larger scale?
Well, no. What? Duplo? You know, they used to have Quattro Lego. They had to be Lego Quattro. I think it's basically each brick was the size.
Lego
of like
Quattro
a
sounds like
for
a abortive stereo line
Quattro,
for the 90s.
Quattro, like the
pretty much.
like the car in Life on Mars.
Yes, I wish it was. No, I think we'll be all right. You know, I did add height. I don't know if you saw the promotional shots from last year's Lego RFS Fluid Links Advent Calendar, which apparently is the official name that I'm giving it, and we'll call it nothing less. You are actually two little flat plates higher. I am one higher. Warren is normal height.
Warren's
Remember that. Warren is normal height, you freaks.
the base of Warren's chair in the studio set thing you can't see because he's behind the table. But yes, I saw the extra plates, as you say.
Yeah, to give it its official name. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoy those. Those are on YouTube, by the way. They're all on our Radio Free Skaro YouTube channel. You can watch all of last year's. I don't think we've posted much since last Christmas, so they might be the most recent thing, and they have their own playstlist.
Yeah, I was going to say you set up a playlist for it to make it easier.
Yeah, I did.
I when we were talking about this the other day for some off-air planning, we actually do that sometimes.
We did. Occasional time. We've done it.
But I went back and watched one or two of them, and I still laughed my butt off.
Oh, I'm glad I amused you.
They are pretty funny, I have to say.
They're funny. They're cute. I mean, part of it is me laughing at us. Part of it is me laughing at just like some of your camera choices. I didn't watch. Was it episode 10 or whatever, where you like cut away to like some movie poster where you troll Warren with
I did troll Warren. Yeah.
My favorite's the one where I get exterminated, frankly. That one's pretty great.
Yeah. It's not because it's not just telesnaps. It's also like sort of cutaways to what we're talking about, you see, which are also telesnapped, because if we start doing moving images, it's just going to get more and more labor intensive, and
Exactly.
we don't want to do
A few
that.
years time,
Nobody wants that.
A few years time, we'll have to do like fully 3D rendered, like on par with I don't know, theatrical releases.
Yes.
Can I ask why we're avoiding any of these news items, which are quite interesting?
This is it. We're talking about we're laying out some stuff that's happening. We got
Okay, I guess
Simon
so.
Guerrier this week, John and Gav next week.
This is what
Fluid
happens.
Links.
This is what happens when we have no Doctor Who. We have no announcement of Doctor Who. We have no nothing from production.
Yeah. Oh, well, nothing that we can talk about anyway.
Nothing we're going to talk about. Yeah,
No.
there was that set report thing the other day, but yeah,
Be careful, everyone. There's a set report. Everyone was talking about it. Like, it's like, I don't know if I want to know about this. Somebody just retweeted it into my timeline. So we're not going to mention what it is, but it might already be out and done and dusted. But just in case you haven't heard it, you're not going to hear it from us. There was also like this. It was weird. It was like this one tweet that I saw was like, it looks like Doctor Who will have a Series 12 sneak peek on Children of Need, which is what, like the November 16th or something like that, 15th.
Children in Need. Yeah.
Children in Need. And then there was a picture of Jodie and the TARDIS and stuff. And then, interesting. Well, I wonder what the source of this. So let's keep reading the tweet. And then the tweet kept on going, here is what I roughly think that announcement would look like. And then, so he mocked up a shot of like Jodie and the TARDIS looking at the camera, and like he put like a Children in Need graphic on it. It's like, okay, that's, well, I guess.
Why, Internet? Why?
I guess that's
just stop.
Tweet bait. I don't know what that means, but
what was?
Yeah, I don't know if
what
it's
was
true
the last one? That kid visiting the set or something like that.
That's what I think. Yeah, see, it was though, wasn't it? Because it's during the airing of the show, because Doctor Who was on the air this time last year. Yeah,
right.
Those weird halcyon days when Doctor Who was on television. Feels weird.
What I hate about those things is that 3 weeks later, somebody will ask me about that, some civilian,
all right,
because somehow it got to them that this doctor, and I'll be like, oh God, and I go through all this again. No, please stop.
What did they ask you, New Warren? Sorry,
just the tweet bait like that will show up, and then weeks later, somebody who's just kind of interested in Doctor Who will ask me, "What about this thing?" Because I've just found out about it, and it's like, and I've forgotten that it was a fake thing that showed up and then went away, and it's maddening.
I know, and you have to you just direct them to the episode, then
and then you got to be that nerd and just go, "No, I think you're wrong."
Here's the backstory. Okay, no, don't walk away. You have to know so you can tell others. Yeah. So who knows if there's going to be a Doctor Who thing on Children in Need. It might just be wish casting. Maybe no one will ever say anything about anything regarding Doctor Who Series 12. And then we'll just wake up someday and go, hey, guess what? Doctor Who is on. We didn't want to tell you because we didn't want to spoil anything. And so it'll just show up. And you won't know.
All 10 episodes on iPlayer.
It'll drop. Just like, remember
featuring Tim Shaw as the host.
Yeah, I remember when like Class aired. Like it was like, so Class is coming on BBC 3, but we don't know what time. It's going to be on BBC 3, and then all of a sudden, like in the middle of the night, it was like there were 2 episodes. The first 2 episodes of Class were suddenly on BBC 3. It's like, oh, okay, there they are, I guess. Well, that's a thing. You've made a choice, I guess, by just dumping it on the BBC 3, and then not many people watched it, and they never made another series. So,
La dee
but
dee
you'll see all the Class cast people at Chicago.
I will. I know. I just feel like the launch could have gone better. I wonder how BBC 3 in general is doing. I don't really pay attention to BBC as much when Doctor Who isn't on, and so like I know they wanted to go all digital and like for BBC 3 and not have a proper schedule, have it be a streaming channel per se. But I don't know how it's doing.
The silly part of it all was they switched BBC 3 off air to all digital. But the way the BBC charter and mandate works, as we may remember from talking about the 2 a.m. BBC One broadcast for Class.
Yeah.
They still have to show everything on terrestrial TV because everybody from the British public who pays the TV license should have the ability to see it on terrestrial TV.
Yeah.
I'm blaming Remainers for this, just to stir the pot.
Oh, don't stay away from that. It's a dicey time in England. We're not going to make any jokes. I mean, come on. At least I have an hour more to sleep in.
Stephen and I are in Alberta right now, and that ain't much better. So.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
People in glass houses and all that.
Everywhere is going through political strife
Wexit,
of some sort.
The dumbest, even dumber than Brexit. Wexit. Western Canadians, give me a break, and I'm a Western Canadian, and I say give me a break.
Yeah.
Well, communist Western Canadian.
Yes, Western Canadian. Anyway, so to sum up, potential spoilers on the internet about a set report for Doctor Who Series 12. Unconfirmed reports either way. Nothing has even been mentioned officially of Doctor Who being on Children in Need, and that's in like 3 weeks' time. And I'm guessing, I know a lot of people are saying, apparently there's going to be a holiday, like a Christmas special. I think that is just wish casting, because they're shooting right now. I don't think they'd be shooting this year's Christmas special this late. Like
No,
it's
there's no way.
literally 2 months away, and that is a lot. Maybe in
Unless they're doing reshoots or something, but even then.
No, I don't think they're doing research. I think it's probably for next year's holiday special, which is probably
wouldn't surprise me.
possibly a thing. So, unless they've already shot it and they're just going to drop it in there thinking, hey, guess what? There's a Doctor Who holiday special. But even then, I feel like they should have been promoting that in New York Comic Con if they're going to tell anyone. Like, it just feels like that. You promote it. When Doctor Who's off the air for a year, you don't sort of like slyly mention, oh, looks like there's a Doctor Who, better watch it next week. I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I think the original plan of early 2020 is probably the most accurate one. So,
also, a Christmas special now would mean later Doctor Who later, like, because they wouldn't go Christmas special, which is actually the first episode, and then we just keep going. That wouldn't. So we'd probably have to wait till March or something for proper Who.
I would see, that's the curious thing. So, like, Gallifrey 1 is coming up, as you know, we talk about it often. I am so curious what they mean by early 2020, because if it starts in like January or February, like this might be the first ever Gallifrey 1 in 31 years, the 31-year history
Where
of
it's
it.
on broadcast, yeah.
Be on broadcast. Like you'd have to allow for a broadcast of a Doctor Who episode at Gallifrey 1. Madness.
Well, we came across that a few years ago at LA Who.
Yeah, but this is Gallifrey 1.
This is the Gallifrey one. One thing I had wondered that nothing's going to come of it, I'm sure, is this weekend is also the MCM London Comic Con.
Right.
And I thought, well, if we had nothing at New York Comic Con for Doctor Who stuff, maybe we'll get something at London. And I mean,
Sweet zippity doo-dah.
yeah, nothing's happened yet that I'm aware of.
At least they had a booth. We're recording this on Saturday night for us, which is like, in the middle of the night in the UK. So no, nothing's happening there. But at least they had a booth with like stuff, and they actually even like acknowledged the existence of Series 11, which is, something. So at least they've done that bit, and they had panels and stuff too. So there are, as we mentioned last week, there is some Doctor Who content going on, but it's not necessarily new content. So no, we wait yet again for any news about any broadcast of Series 12, which surely must be nearing the end of recording now. But
well, 20 minutes into this podcast, speaking of news, maybe we should tackle that list that's sitting
Just
there.
a thought.
Yeah, the news of which is this per se. There's not a lot of news because there's no Doctor Who and stuff. But we've been talking about the Who for Schools initiative, realitybombpodcast.com/Who for Schools. We've been teasing that we can't tell you who's on the commentaries because we basically didn't know if we were allowed to or not. Well, now it's been released, and you can actually see what the list of commentaries are. There's a ton of them. There may be 14 episodes in season 26, but there are more than 14 commentaries because there's some alternate commentary tracks or something. Like Battlefield episode 1 has 2 of them. The second, which is Vinay Patel, writer of Demons of the Punjab, is on a commentary. Peter Harness is a commentary for Ghostlight episode 3. I'm so sorry, Peter, to be looped into Ghostlight, but I'm sure it'll be an entertaining commentary.
Ghostlight is good.
And
No.
So basically, each story has a special one-off commentary because Sophie Aldred does Ace herself does the commentary for Christopher Fenwick Part 4. I was the tech support on that one, so I listened to it and edited it, and it's very lovely indeed. There's a couple of little tidbits in there that I did not know. So and then Andrew Cartmel, the script editor himself of season 26 and the whole McCoy era, does the last episode of Survival as well. So the whole list is there. Links in the show notes, radiofreeskaro.com, and also how to contribute to this initiative. A $10 donation or more gets you all these commentaries. So check the links. Find your school charity of choice. Donate. Do chip in if you can, and enjoy some wonderful Doctor Who commentaries. Courtesy of Who for Schools.
So now that the list is out there, so Warren, you're doing Battlefield episode 2?
Indeed I am, sir. And I'm editing a bunch, which I won't bore anybody with.
And Stephen, you're doing Battlefield episode 4, and I'm doing Curse of Fenric episode 1.
Wow. Exciting stuff. It was fun. It was fun watching that. How did you enjoy watch? It was Battlefield 2. At least it got the break, right? I mean, I feel like these are the elements of Doctor Who in the 7th Doctor era that that at least are not disgusting to you, Warren. Am I right in that?
It's fine.
Okay.
It is what it is.
All right. Well, you didn't have to listen to Kev McCullough's music, unfortunately, which would have been...
No, that's very fortunate, actually.
Would have made it
However,
better.
you don't get the Destroyer either in episode 2.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool monster, the Destroyer.
Steven, you got the Destroyer.
I did. I got the Destroyer. I got the last episode. It was pretty cool. Talking about... I
Well,
went in...
Episode 2, that's the one that ends with Sophie in the water tank, right?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah. The story that McCoy always loves to tell about having saved your life.
Everyone
Which
loves
is kinda
telling
cool.
that story. It was pretty cool. Yeah, especially since it's a raw
Which is
footage
told in my
exists.
commentary by Riley Silverman.
There we are. I did the I did episode 4. I went in. I thought like maybe I'll watch all the rest of the episodes of the story, but I thought, no, I'm not. I'm going to go in cold. I did watch episode 4 beforehand, but then I didn't want to like say, oh, we missed it, but we're in episode 3, because then I'd be stepping on other people's commentaries, so I didn't want to do that. It was fun. It was fun watching. It was weird though watching just one episode out of context in a way, because I'm used to watching the whole story. So
I went in cold as well, but it was fine because I got to watch a part 1. So
That's
we started
true.
From the start.
Yeah, don't need to. Speaking of, we should mention that there was something that came out regarding Series 11 of Doctor Who. It's kind of odd in a way. The BBC YouTube channel, by the way, don't forget to subscribe to that BBC Doctor Who YouTube channel, has been sort of, putting out clips, as they often do. They put out clips from episodes, just random episodes sometimes. So they've been doing a whole Series 11 thing. And they put out a 44-minute Series 11 highlights video. Like, here's the highlights of Series 11 in a one
That's
giant
the
video.
length of an episode, darn it.
Yeah, it is.
Darn near anyway.
Yeah, I've watched all the episodes. So I must admit I haven't watched the highlights, but I'm almost curious to see what they chose as highlights and how they edited it together. But it's all there on the Doctor Who YouTube channel. So check it out if you dare. Also, if you dare, the Edge of Time VR game has a release date at long last. November 12th is when it
If your
comes
wallet
out.
dares, you mean?
Oh God,
Not the game itself, but the technology to play it.
Yeah, I don't even know what the how much the game costs, but because I boasted several months ago, maybe I'll sort of drop down some money and get a gaming headset or something like that. And then I looked at the price. I was like, they're expensive. They're $650 for one of these suckers,
Nope. No, thank you.
Don't know if I can.
You got to
do
be
it.
deep into VR for that to be a
I
thing
know.
you'll consider.
I had considered, and this might be a thing, in that me and maybe a couple area friends might actually like chip in, because there's a friend of ours, Annette, as there's another VR game coming out that she's intensely interested in, and I thought, what if we went in together, go halvesies on this VR headset, and she could get that game, and I'll get the Doctor Who game, and then we'd have dropped like $800 for between the two of us for 2 games.
We've all seen that episode of The Simpsons where they buy Radioactive Man #1. We know how
It never ends well.
That's a good point.
For me, I could spend that money. It'd be undeniably cool to be in VR doing it.
Yeah.
But I can not spend that money and just watch a walkthrough on YouTube, honestly, which is, I guarantee, coming a week later.
I don't know if I could see it. Warren, I've talked to you about this, but like gaming wise, I can't do first person shooters because I'm always.
That's VR is though. I mean,
well,
VR
I know,
is
but
completely first
well,
person.
because I'm compelled to always like turn the controller to see what's to the left or the right of me, and I can't, like, if I'm always doing that, then I'm going like, I can't do this. But for some reason, like, I've tried it on like just looking at VR videos and stuff, because I have a Google cardboard. It's like $20. I thought, what the hell, let's do it. And I actually could do that. And I thought, this is amazing. I thought it was a really cool thing. Like, for $20, if you want to just test out what VR is like and if you'll enjoy it, get a Google cardboard. This episode brought to you by Google Cardboard.
But the other thing is, and they haven't said anything about this, but
No.
it's the same code no matter what. So they could theoretically just release this non-VR afterwards. They give it 6 months, and you can just buy it on Xbox Store or whatever for $15 or whatever it ends up being. I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm just saying it's something they could do.
I feel like the hook of it is the fact that it's a VR game.
Probably, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, because I am intrigued. Like, the videos that I have seen of it, like, it's more than just a standard, like, 5-minute YouTube thing, So I am intrigued by it. I wish you could rent these things. This is why we need a Blockbuster video back, so you could rent gaming headsets.
We don't need Blockbuster video
just
back.
for this, just for gaming headsets. Just rent them out.
Well, that sounds about as much as well thought out as their business plan. So
that's true.
Yeah.
I'm just on the looking at the Steam webpage for it, and it's looping a trailer which at the end says coming to VR September 2019.
No, it's wrong.
Well, maybe not.
But I tell you what, games never ever meet deadline. Despite how
That's
much gaming companies punish their employees during crunch time to try and make a deadline, they always seem to be 2 or 3 more deadlines after that.
Warren lives in the city of EA, so I'm sure.
I live a block up from where they do Gears of War, and you can tell when crunch time is because people do not look well.
Oh, boy.
And I'm not laughing at them. I'm actually concerned, frankly.
Yeah, BioWare is just in our city right now. A few blocks away from here in Stantec Tower in downtown Edmonton. So,
Was that where they are now? Okay.
That's where they are now. Yeah, they moved. So we all know about
Tower,
that.
which got partly demolished yesterday.
A window broke during a wind because a wind.
Somebody almost died.
Yeah, it's not funny. What are you laughing about? The video is
what the hell?
terrible.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
The poor guy's falling out of the thing. It's only 4 floors up, thankfully, but he was fine. They got him out of there without him falling, but it was a harrowing situation. Very windy in Edmonton on Friday. Snow showers tomorrow.
Yuck.
I just thought we could do the whole weather report. A couple things left before we get the hell out of here and talk to Simon Guerrier. There's a first look at the 13th meeting 10th Doctor Titan Comics to kick off year 2 of the 13th Doctor comic range. There's been a whole host of alternate covers released, several of them, including a Batman one.
That one's great. That's a fantastic looking Batman cover.
It's a pretty cool Batman looking one.
With 10 as Batman.
Yeah.
And also the one with 10 being held by 13 is pretty cool. Held inside a TARDIS, a tiny TARDIS.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
And Alice X Zhang always does a good job.
Oh,
I don't know what it says about me. We talked about these covers a while ago, but I don't know what it says about me. But my favorite one is the one with the Doctor like walking around the rim of the active.
Yeah, because you're a Rick and Morty fan, and this is very Rick and Morty-esque.
It is kind of Rick and Morty. Yeah. With a
I'm
pterodactyl.
a little tired of Rick and Morty.
sitting
And
on
more to
top
the
of
point,
TARDIS.
they're fans.
Yeah. What are you saying there, Chris?
Oh, I was saying I like the little pterodactyl sitting on top of the TARDIS.
And there's the one with the. I think Alex Zhang, just judging by the artwork, I don't know what the credits are, but she does one, or someone does one anyway. With the Weeping Angel, rather, which is very creepy because you think it's going to turn to look at you. It's a scary cover. I'm kind of scared by it. If I scroll up and scroll back down, which I'm doing right now, no, it's still there. Okay, good. So we're safe.
Well,
anyway,
there's two with Weeping Angels, in fact.
Yeah, the issue itself is coming out January 2020. So do check that out. And
much like Doctor Who, maybe not.
Yeah, possibly. Well, certainly like Picard. Hey, Star Trek Picard has a drop date, and it's January 23rd.
I'm pretty sure they're going to stick to that drop date.
I know that, but Doctor Who doesn't, and I feel like they should. But anyway.
I've been at work all day and a little out of it, but apparently the trailer for Moffat and Gatiss' Dracula dropped at London Comic Con.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Never saw that. Well, maybe there's some Doctor Who references in there. Who knows? Last bit of news: the Keith Barnfather is releasing a couple of new adventures on November 4th, featuring Syl. Nabil Shaban returns in the role of Syl in Devil Seeds of Arador. As well as the Dr. Moore Monsters, which are a whole bunch of documentaries around the making of this and featuring other people who have done monsters over the years. It features, as I said, Nabil Shaban. Christopher Ryan's in there, who of course played Kiv in The Trial of a Time Lord. Also Sophie Aldred, which he mentions on the commentary for Curse of Fender Part 4, I will say. Janet Henfrey and Sakuntala Remini, who played she was in Survival. I recognize her, but I couldn't remember her character's name. Anyway, a whole host of old Doctor Who actors are
One thing I have to single out for this, because I watched the trailer for it, is that they shoot it in widescreen, but they deliberately make it look like old videotape, and it isn't. I think it's HD and then sort of damaged essentially into old videotape form.
Right.
But they did a pretty good job of making you go, is this maybe it could be.
Yeah. I did see it too, and I thought Sill's costume's amazing. I thought they've done a really good job on Sill's costume. It's slightly updated, but not quite. It's like it's still evocative of the original costume, mostly the Mind Warp one, which is a little more flexible for him. But yeah.
Yeah, it almost feels like they did a classic Doctor Who in 20, and I haven't seen the whole thing, so I don't know. I couldn't give it a review, but it feels like they tried to go for classic Doctor Who in 2019.
Yeah, which they may well have done. And you can check it out. It's on Amazon.co.uk. Comes out November 4th. So the tales of Sill continue. Thanks to Keith Godfather. And this podcast shall continue as well after the break. Good chap and overall fine writer Simon Guerrier has done a story in the Target Storybook, and he drops by to talk about that as well as a legacy of Terrance Dicks after this. The Target Storybook is an upcoming collection of stories from talented people who have written for Doctor Who have starred in Doctor Who, and it also features the final contribution from the great Terrance Dicks. And here to speak for all of them is someone who has contributed to the book himself. It's writer Simon Guerrier. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Stephen. Hello. I can't speak for anybody. I can't even speak for myself. Come on, let's face it.
I know. I wanted to put the pressure on you, but that would obviously be very unfair. You were one of 15 people to write, though, for this storybook, including Terrance Dicks, Colin Baker, Matthew Waterhouse, for people who have been on screen or writing for this, Mike Tucker, Joy Wilkinson, Vinay Patel, who's of course written for the TV series, and then amongst that lot of very talented writers is in fact you. So how did this whole thing come about? This Target Storybook?
Well, it's all really down to Steve Cole, the amazing editor, who I've known for years. I first met him at a convention when I was a guest in 1997, and we've spoken a fair bit over the years. And then he, having left BBC Books in the late 1990s to go freelance, he has come back as an editor on some of their books. So some of my previous books he's edited. And in February, he just emailed me out of the blue and said, I've got this idea. And he told me what the book was about. And then he told me what he wanted me to write. He really set out the story he wanted me to write. And really all the major elements of the story were in that email. Which was great because, I was like, this sounds very exciting and fun to do. Mm-hmm. It was weird because what he needed me to do was write a synopsis for the story so that we could get it approved by the BBC. So what I was effectively doing was pitching the story to him that he had just given me. So I wrote up the paragraph or so that he'd given me as a longer outline. And then we knocked that back and forth between us until I was doing what he wanted. Basically, it was a very straightforward kind of writing exercise, really. But so the wheeze of the book is that it's all stories that happen within or around TV stories. So my story takes place midway through episode 4 of The Chase, the first Doctor story from 1965.
Oh, fascinating. I'm just trying to think, which one's episode 4? Have they left the Empire State Building, or are they just about to arrive? I can't remember now.
So it is the wheeze of my story is what happens when the Doctor, Ian, and Barbara realise they've left Vicky behind. Mm-hmm. Because he basically, as Steve said, they have this sudden shock that they've left Vicky behind. And then we cut to the Daleks and we cut back to the TARDIS and they've moved on in their conversation. So his wheeze was what happens in that gap. Because that's quite a conversation. And he had some ideas about where that would go as well and what would happen. So it's not just people chatting in the TARDIS. It's actually a story and an adventure.
Mm-hmm. So was that specific time period, by which I mean 12 minutes into episode 4 of The Chase, was that your invention or was that Steve's?
That was all Steve. That all came from him. There is another couple of characters who were involved in my story. They're mine, but but the whole sort of wheeze of the story, the whole conceit of it is Steve's. So I just did what he wanted, as far as I was concerned. And yeah, it took a few days to sort out the synopsis so that he was happy. A version of that synopsis then went off to the BBC. I think they got about 3 paragraphs just to keep it short and sweet. They approved that at the beginning of April, and I delivered a draft by the end of April, and then by the middle of May, all done. So very straightforward, very quick, very easy, really, and really good fun. And then I didn't know who else was in the book until it was all announced. So yeah, that's very exciting, really. I'm a little awed to be in such august company.
So you were basically like writing this book. I assume you had a concept of what the book was going to be. It's going to be several short stories from several different writers at the time.
Yeah. And I think Steve had mentioned some of the other writers. So I knew I see Matthew Sweet a fair bit anyway, because we don't live very far apart and we often meet for coffee. So I knew he was doing one. I can't remember if we just didn't see each other in that period, or whether we were both a bit guarded about what we were writing. Because the trouble is that it can change, or there can be objections, or you can be booted out of what you're writing if they don't like it. So you tend to be a bit guarded about talking about what you're working on anyway. I assumed they would have made an approach to Terrance Dicks. My thought would be maybe he would introduce it rather than write a story. So I'm thrilled they got a story out of him. Upsetting as it is that it's his last published work. And then everybody else, I just found out when they announced it, really. So it's all very exciting, and I was very excited to read it. That's the exchange I had with Matthew, that once we saw who else was in it, we just wanted to get our hands on a copy to be able to read it and see what everybody else had done.
I assume you have. I mean, as we record this, it's literally the day before release. As it comes out, it is now available from bookstores everywhere. I assume you've actually had your hands on this thing and been able to read it.
So I was sent a single copy in advance of getting my author copies, and I started to read it. And then my son's friend, who is very into Doctor Who, was 9 a couple of weeks ago, and we were debating what he would like. So I texted his mum, and she said he's really into old Doctor Who books, and it was clearly the thing that he would most enjoy. So yes, I wrenched myself away from reading the book and gave it to him as a present, and he was thrilled, especially by the fact that he'd had it before anybody else had. He thought that was especially exciting. So yes, I've read the first 2 or 3 stories, and it's all very exciting and very different. The stories all feel very different and go in places that I wasn't expecting as well. So it's really fun, really good fun book to read.
Absolutely. It sounds like it. And you mentioned old Doctor Who books. I mean, I have to think, just based on the visual presentation of this, it very much matches the style of the Target books that came out, last year? About the novelizations of The Day of the Doctor and Twice Upon a Time and Rose and like those 5 that came out. Do you know if that was a direct sort of like, hey, let's keep this sort of Target thing going a little bit with this idea?
Yeah, I think so. So Anthony Day has done the cover in the sort of matching style of the as I think he'd admit, he's taking his cues from Chris Kelios, who did the Target books back in the 70s, and who BBC Books has employed as well in the last few years to do new covers. He did new covers for Battlefield, The Visitation, and Vengeance on Varos, didn't he? And so Anthony's doing covers in those styles. So they're all of a piece. And I think that was very much the intention, that it would feel of a piece with the Target books and stuff. And the way that the Target books expanded on stuff in television episodes. I mean, I'm reading, prompted by knowing that you were going to talk to me about Target books. I was having a look through my own sort of incomplete collection of them, and have started reading The Time Warrior, which Terrance Dicks wrote in 1978, and I'm struck in that by how there are there's a whole load of stuff in that book that doesn't happen on screen. So when, for example, when Irongron has Sir Edward's page that he's captured to torture and interrogate, which is on screen is a way of showing that Lynx the Sontaran has a way of interrogating humans. That's, you know, it's another show of his sort of sophistication and technological power. But in the book, you get a scene in which the capture happens, and the capture happens with the page being riding through the trees on a horse and then be running into a rope and a whole bunch of people dragging him off and so. And you go, that's the sort of scene that as a script editor you would cut because it's not essential and it's expensive to do. And Terence Dicks, the script editor on The Time Warrior on TV, would have cut that if Robert Holmes had put it in the script. But as the novelizer of the story, he puts it back in, or he invents it. So yeah, I think what the Target Storybook is doing is very much within that sort of scope.
Mm-hmm. There has to be a certain thrill, I suppose, to writing anything Doctor Who related with that vintage Target logo on the side. Was there an appeal there as well for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was a massive fan of the Target books as a kid, massive fan, and I've read loads of them. You know, like there were 150 books. I must have read 100 of them. Mm-hmm. You know, at that formative age, I was going the Winchester, the city where I grew up. They had a library with a shelf of Doctor Who books, and I was reading them in the mid to late 80s, I think, sort of 83 onwards. And the books had been out for 10 years. So the library had a whole stock of them, very well thumbed, very well read, but a huge, great swathe of them. And because lots of people read them, they replenished them and you got through them. But also because they'd been out for a while, they would turn up at secondhand. You know, I remember them turning up at school fetes and stuff where you could buy them for 10p or 30p. My copy of The Time Warrior, there's a pencil note on the inside cover that it was 35p. I probably bought that from the antiques market in Winchester, which I used to go to because it had a display of the early books, all those Chrysokelios covers. Uh-huh. And I just used to stand there and just gaze at them in wonder and delight. And, you know, because I didn't have the money to buy them. I used to get teased by the guy who ran the bookstall because I would just stand there staring at the Doctor Who books like a lemon for, you know, half an hour at a time or whatever.
Right.
But I just found them, they were so exciting and so wondrous and such a, you know, it's such a cliche to say that, you know, in those days you couldn't watch any old Doctor Who because repeats were so rare, but they were such a window into the past. They were like time travel. You know, that's the thing, that you could through them you could reach and touch Doctor Who from before you'd started watching. I found that fascinating and exciting. And then also just as exciting was to watch episodes, to read the books of episodes that I had seen but would never see again. That sort of stuff seemed magical. I remember reading the novelization of The Visitation, and it's so vividly conjuring not just the TV episode, but the circumstances in which I watched it. And I could remember exactly where I'd sat on the sofa and where my family had been around me and all of that sort of stuff. Even telling you now, I can still picture the exact wheelable shelving unit that the TV was on at the time and the sort of make of TV that it was. There's a real kind of rush of excitement and emotion just from the association of those books.
I know what you mean. My first ever purchase of a Target book was, and I can still see it in my mind's eye. I can see where it is on the shelf. I can see the bookstore in my hometown where I grew up that's no longer there, and it was Black Orchid. And at the time, I had no idea about any stories. I had no idea about like episode guides or whatever. And of course, the cover is, there's no Doctor on there. It's just the Doctor in the Harlequin costume with a mask on, juggling balls. And I just had no idea what this was. It was a story I'd never heard of. Reading it, I figured I don't recognize this Doctor at all. So like for me, the Target books just were like this whole other world that I had yet to experience. Like when, back in the days before the internet, when you couldn't look up episode guides, like I hadn't seen an episode guide at that point, and it was just a exciting thing.
Yeah. Exactly. All of that. I had, I was given, my elder brother gave me the Doctor Who monster book, which was a sort of A4, kind of like a brochure, really, that they produced in 1975 when Tom Baker had just become the Doctor, which was kind of a breathless, utterly exciting précis of the history of Doctor Who as it was then. And the back cover was a whole bunch of the Target books. And I used to just gaze at that bloody thing. I just thought it was so exciting. It's still one of the best Doctor Who books ever written. The style of it, the brevity of it, the sort of breathless excitement of it continues to be an inspiration to me. I've used it on some of the DVD documentaries I've done. I've used it in some of the books I've done as a kind of a guide to myself as to what I should be doing, what response I want to elicit from the audience. It's just the promise of it is so exciting. And so to be part of any of that in my own little way is very exciting.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Terrance Dicks. It is sadly his last contribution to Doctor Who and indeed writing in general. I'm pleased, I suppose, in some way that he, I think this is his last published work. I'm not too sure what else he did outside of Doctor Who, but I do feel that it's right and proper for Terrance Dicks to have a part in this. That they've actually released an excerpt from his story, "Save Yourself," featuring the second Doctor. But just your overall thoughts on Terrance Dicks, I suppose, tying in with some of those Target memories and just what kind of writer he was overall.
Well, he's just amazing, isn't he? And I think I rather took him for granted as a kid. His name was everywhere on those books and on the other books he wrote. He wrote all sorts of things. I read the Sherlock Holmes spin-offs that he did. I read various adventure things that he wrote. I met him a few times. I interviewed him a couple of times. I interviewed him on stage, where he was fantastically funny and a bit prickly and a bit rude to me, but because it got such a funny reaction from the audience, so you couldn't take offense from it. It was part of the fun of it.
Right.
He took great interest in things that I was writing about. So anything that I wrote, he wanted to see if I was interviewing him. So he wanted a copy of the History of Bernie Summerfield book because I interviewed him for that. He got Doctor Who magazine, which he clearly was still reading to the end because he was in the. He had a letter published earlier this year, so he was voracious about his reading and interested in what was going on. The big thing, which I actually discussed with him, is that the more I've worked as a writer myself, the more my admiration for him has gone up and up. And obviously, I owe a lot of what I do to the fact that I read his books when I was a kid, him more than perhaps anybody else. And then Terrance's sort of mentoring of Paul Cornell helped Paul get to write for the New Adventures. And it was the New Adventures and that open submissions policy that they had in the 1990s that really made me think this is something I could do, because I suddenly had to say, suddenly writing wasn't like being an astronaut or wasn't like being a pop star. It suddenly seemed like a real thing I could aim for. Mm-hmm. So I owe that kind of that career thing to him. And then, my wife, who's not into Doctor Who at all, but is a historian and into Victorian stuff and whatever, she gets that from the adaptation of Jane Eyre that he produced, which the TV version with Timothy Dalton in it, which was repeated when Timothy Dalton became James Bond in 1987. And for some reason, she missed the final episode. I think she had a school thing to go to. And so I think her mum got her the book as a kind of sop for whatever duty she'd have to go and do. And as a result of that, my wife is I think she's read the Victorian canon, and has got a PhD in it and stuff. So actually, when I think I was at Chicago in 2008 with her, and mentioned this to Terence, and so she and Terence had an amazing conversation about Victorian books and just sort of comparing what was good and who they liked and whatever. And as she said, it's not just that he's read Dickens and Trollope and sort of the obvious ones. He's read a lot of the obscure ones as well, and has views on, you can always tell the Victorianistas because they have particular views on Wilkie Collins or on the lesser known Bronte or whatever. And he was right there. You'd expect that as a producer of the classic serials, but he was extraordinarily well read and knowledgeable and stuff. And looking at his books now, I can see how much of that filters through into the deceptively simple prose that he writes, that there's the vocabulary that he uses, the way he describes things and the way that he explains things, they seem very, very simple, but there's a great knowledge behind them. And I was saying about how I admire him as a writer. I mean, you look at the brief that he was given when he wrote the War Games with Malcolm Hulke. You look at the brief he was given when he wrote Horror of Fang Rock. You look at the brief he was given when he wrote The Five Doctors. They're all nightmares as a writer. They're all right. We've got no money. You've got 10 weeks to fill, a limited number of sets. What the hell are you going to do? And the War Games is this mesmerizingly clever bit of writing, which is a series of escapes and being recaptured and escaping again and being recaptured. And every time that happens, the Doctor and his friends learn something that changes what the story is. Not just they learn a bit of information, but the bit of information they learn makes the story much bigger. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the repercussions of it and the consequences of it become bigger and bigger and bigger until you reach this extraordinary climax of the Doctor being put on trial, which seems utterly satisfying. And I watched the War Games for the first time on video. The very nice lady, Debbie Morris, who is now Jonathan Morris's wife, because I introduced them. Well, not because I introduced them, but I introduced them. But she lent me those videos over a weekend when we must have been in our teens. And I watched them in a single sitting. I couldn't stop. They were so exciting and stuff. And I look at that now and just go, that's an with all the limitations, with all of the issues involved, with all of the whatever. And, don't get me wrong, it does look like 60s television. It's not, if you watch it now, it does look old. But given the circumstances, given the whatever, that's an extraordinary achievement, an amazing thing to do. Horror of Fang Rock is his replacement script for a story that gets caught up in BBC politics and was later remade as State of Decay. And they're not even going to film it at the usual place. They're going to film it in a studio they haven't used before in Birmingham, or at least they haven't used before on Doctor Who. So it's not a big space. It's got to all be confined. You've got a limited cast. And he turns out the Horror of Fang Rock is wondrous. I mean, it's so good. It's so beautifully written. I don't think Leela is better written in any of the stories she appears in. All of the, she's wearing jeans and a jumper, and yet her history, her background, her character is all there in what she says and what she does. It's an amazing bit of writing, and again, full of. It's got, I know the Doctor Who magazine's Fact of Fiction has found the children's book of lighthouses that Terence Dicks cribbed from, but the erudition of that script, the history, the nuances of it, the sense of a society that you get on the mainland, even though the story takes place on an island, it's just so rich and exciting. And then the Five Doctors, Robert Holmes, normally spoken of as the greatest of Doctor Who's writers ever, is given a brief where you're going, right, so you've got 4 leading men who've all got to star in it and all have egos, so all need to star in it. They all need to think of themselves as the star of this. We don't know who the companions are going to be. We might not know until we're actually filming it. you've got to get a load of monsters in it. It's got to have the Cybermen in it because the script editor really likes the Cybermen, but also other monsters that are suitable to meet the Doctors that they're meeting, and that we can get the rights for. So that's all complicated as well. You're continually being faced with issues of budget. You're continually being faced with all of that. You're limited because of the cast, because of who you've got in. You're limited on time and all of those sorts of things. And and that defeats Robert Holmes. And Terrance Dicks, I remember asking him on this on stage and just going, how on earth do you face an impossible brief like that? And he just said, well, I kind of turned it on its head and made it a game. And you go, it's just such that genuinely is genius. That's such an amazing response. And he delivers it, and it's all fine. And then Tom Baker, one of the leading men, doesn't want to be in it, and he makes that work as well. So that as a kid watching it, I had no sense at all that Tom Baker wasn't involved. I didn't know that he turned it down. And as far as I was concerned, that all worked and all worked seamlessly. Just breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. And then, you watched some of the other stuff he worked on. I think his classic serial adaptation of Oliver Twist is full of amazing bits of work. And you watch him in that, tweaking and correcting and quietly improving Dickens. And you go, that is an extraordinary thing to do as a writer. There's loads of lovely little touches in that. The DVD documentary that's on, I think it's on the Horror of Fang Rock DVD, has one of my favourites as a clip where when Bill Sykes turns on Nancy, Terrance is faced with the fact that why doesn't he just shoot her? So he comes up with the most amazing thing of Nancy stops him from shooting her by saying, no, Bill, they'll hear. And so it's a character point that even as he's murdering her, she's trying to protect him. And that just amazing, absolutely amazing bit of writing. It's so revealing of character. It's so awful in its poignancy. Just amazing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about the taking it for granted, because I just feel like, partly perhaps because of his public self-deprecation, I think a little bit. He sort of like sloughed off the war games as the first and the last episodes are good, but then it's just a big padded runaround. I think towards the end, I think perhaps the video age and indeed the DVD age, as new generations came along to see the war games, people realized how actually brilliant it is. And I hope anyway that the love for that story got through to Terrance by later in his life to make him realize that actually you are a much better writer than you publicly let on.
I have seen him at things where people would tell him how brilliant he was and how important and whatever, and he was like a lot of writers, very awkward about that sort of thing. You're not really quite sure what to do with it. I think it meant a lot to him, especially people he respected saying things like that. I think he found quite moving. But, Paul Cornell's obituary for him in the latest Doctor Who magazine does talk about the fact that Terrance knew he was loved, which, I am very glad of. Very glad of. Yeah, because he was just amazing. And he had such those Target books were bestsellers. They sold masses. They had I wasn't reading them because I was a Doctor Who fan when I was a kid. I read them because everybody read them. Mm-hmm. So all the boys that I knew read Doctor Who books. The difference was that there were the boys who'd read 2 or 3 of them, and there were the boys who'd read all of them. And that's an extraordinary thing. I have a young son now, and the issue is, how do you get boys reading? What are the authors that you can get them onto? What are the things that you can get them reading? So there's all sorts of stuff about where you get them reading sort of comic strip books like Dogman or Captain Underpants. And yes, there were comics and stuff when I was a kid. There was Asterix and Tintin and 2000 AD and whatever else. But I don't remember there being such an issue about getting boys reading books, because we all did. We had Doctor Who and Roald Dahl and whatever else was around at the time, adventure books and stuff. But I think he was part of something that, again, we now rather take for granted and feel the loss of.
We do indeed. But at least we have his last story in the Target Storybook, which features, as I said, 15 different writers, including yourself, Simon. Wonderful to talk to you. Wonderful to talk about Terrance Dicks and indeed Doctor Who in general. The Target Storybook is available now, everyone, as of time of this episode release. So go do and pick it up.
And I don't want to say that if you don't buy it in hardback, you're a bad person. but let's face it, you are. There's no really argument otherwise. I think.
Take it from Simon himself. I mean, you could wait for the paperback, but why would you? It looks it's a wonderful. I've seen a picture of it from the BBC Books account, and it looks lovely. A lovely piece of bit to fit on your bookshelf. So do go out and buy it. Simon Guerrier, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Simon. Simon is fab. I don't need to tell you two that, but I am telling the audience that he is excellent. He was at our very first Gallifrey one, and I think you knew him when you lived in London prior, right?
Yes,
yeah,
I did. Yeah.
So I think he's been to Galley like 2 or 3 times since, as a guest, obviously, and so it's always been nice to talk to him. Yeah. So we always run into him. It's just nice to chat. Last year I know he was there, and I remember that, and it was good to see him again. And he's also very tall. Which is nice.
You're fairly tall, yeah.
You know, it's nice. It's nice when fellow tall people come along, so I don't have to look down and try to hear people in the loud lobby. Like, we can speak at our level. You understand that, Warren? Why don't you grow a few inches and learn to be?
Okay, I'll get right on that.
Thanks. That's it for this here episode of the Radio Free Skaro podcast, talking about Doctor Who and sometimes Star Trek. Next week, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, John
and sometimes Star Wars, because the tickets for
that too,
Rise of Skywalker went on
secured.
sale.
Yeah, I got them. It's surprisingly easy. I was expecting kind of like a Marvel Avengers kind of like internet collapse when those tickets came out, but I was like, I better hop on it looks like I'm literally the first person to book tickets for
I was having a hell
night.
of a time, but I was on a flight.
Yeah,
so
yeah, you were in the air.
I did get them thanks to a friend, but it was not easy.
No. Well, it was easy for me. Very, very easy. Front row and
that's all that matters.
Yeah, like middle of the theater, center, Thursday, December 19th, whenever it is, the last Star Wars movie ever made. Because they won't make any more. They're just going to shut it down. They're going to say, no, we've made enough money. We've had enough attention. Dropping it. That's it.
Yep.
We're done.
Disney Plus is not a thing that exists.
I don't even know what that is. I have no idea. It's not going there anyway. It's movies. You don't put movies on TV, so let's just keep it off.
Except for all the Star Wars movies, which will be on Disney Plus.
Yeah, but whatever. Good for them. Yeah, Star Wars. Chris, you got tickets? You're going to see it as well, are you?
On the 20th, yeah.
20. Oh, you're going to have to wait some hours after the rest of us have seen it then.
I'll live. I'm sure I'll live.
I don't know.
Why not? I mean, right now, to my mind, the new Star Wars films are batting about 500.
Are they really? I'm quite enjoying them.
Is that good? I don't know sports stuff.
500 is. Like
I enjoyed
half
2
and
of the
half.
4. Yeah.
2 of the 4. No. Well, you
There's
can't.
5 now, isn't there?
Well,
Wait.
I don't.
Well, fifth one will be Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see. You're counting Solo and Rogue One as part
I
of
am.
the new Star Wars films.
Yep.
Are you a Last Jedi man or a Force Awakens man?
So you
Last
don't have to
Jedi.
choose. You don't have to choose.
No,
Thank you, sir.
no,
Last
no.
Jedi.
Last Jedi.
Yes, you do, and Last Jedi is better.
Apparently, you have to choose. Apparently,
We have to choose
everyone.
just so you're outnumbered.
Exactly. This is pure gamesmanship, sir.
I tell you what, as I'm glad that we're leaving this at the end of the podcast, is that I seeing like reactions to certain things about Star Wars just makes me think I'm so glad that I am not I go to Star Wars conventions kind of fan. I just love watching Star Wars and having what I am comfortable with and what I am interested in exist, and just ignoring the rest as it doesn't matter to me. It's great.
How do you do that?
Well, I just go, hey, let's watch one of the movies that I like, and then I say, oh, what do you want? But that doesn't tie into like the first version of Clone Wars that they did. It's like, I don't care.
Oh, who cares about that?
I don't care.
The internet just likes to complain about things,
I
and a
know.
certain segment of idiot fans like to be idiots. The end.
I've got a friend who was in Last Jedi and Solo, and he has been doing the con circuit over the last couple of years. And I'm okay seeing stuff from him on Facebook about how such events are.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, I don't want to know anymore. I
was actually thinking about doing the Star Trek Las Vegas thing after I go to World, like literally several days, a few days after I go to Worldcon.
Oh, yeah.
And I came back from a trip to Nashville, jet lagged to hell, and I was like, that's 2 hours. There's no way I will live if I go to Vegas right after New Zealand. So maybe I'll just sleep for a few days. How about that?
I think that'd be wise. Plus, it's Star Trek. You don't want to go.
But if you're gonna do something Star Trek-ish,
that's the one to go to.
Yeah, and the creation one in Vegas.
And I do love Star Trek.
Yeah, but you're going to be surrounded by Klingons. It's going to be awkward. It's just
see, Stephen, only because you don't like Star Trek other than Deep Space Nine, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So that's your lookout.
I know.
I like plenty of Star Treks.
I suppose you do. Yeah, I am. God, I love being a fair weather fan. It's so great. I mean,
and you're coming to Vancouver soon, so you'll be right amongst the fair weather fans.
So great. I mean, thanks everyone for listening to this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a bigger fan of Doctor Who than I am a bigger fan of a Star Wars. So thanks. But boy, sometimes I think about what my feelings towards Star Trek and Star Wars, and I go, oh, there's some people who like Doctor Who about the same amounts, like thinking, yeah, I'm really into this. I'll buy stuff, I'll play games, I'll watch movies, I'll buy DVDs and stuff, but I don't want to dive into fandom too much. Why would I do that? And I kind of think
I mean,
nice.
There's a great cartoon about fandom. I can't remember the name. I can never remember the name of it, but it's this woman goes, I think I'll get into this. I check out the fandom, and she opens a door, and it's people burning things and stabbing each other.
Wow.
And she just goes, well then.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's an accurate display of fandom, frankly.
Yep. And indeed, the course of this conversation. So let's wrap it up now.
Yes.
And indeed, this episode. Next week, John and Gav from the Terry Nation Army. Wonderful YouTube documentaries about the history of Daleks. Deep dive. We will do a deep dive on those documentaries and the amazing amount of research that is done to come up with them. Next week on Doctor Who: Radio Free Skaro. So until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com. Follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro. Subscribe to us on iTunes and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.